The glass shattered inches from my face, champagne dripping down the wall behind me. Everyone at the dinner party froze, except my husband, who laughed and said, "Come on, Maya, it wasn't that bad. Cassandra's just passionate." As his ex smirked at me across our dining table, I realized three things. My marriage was a lie, my husband never loved me, and by tomorrow morning, I would be gone without a trace. I spent the entire day preparing for this dinner party. The herb-crusted rack of lamb had been marinated overnight, the handmade appetizers arranged in perfect spirals, and I'd even splurged on those ridiculous crystal champagne flutes Ethan insisted we needed for appearances. As the regional director at Blackwell Finance, my husband was obsessed with impressing his colleagues, particularly his boss, Martin, who would decide on promotions next month. "Everything needs to be perfect," Ethan had reminded me that morning, squeezing my shoulder with just enough pressure to make me wince. "You know how important this is for us." As if my graphic design business hadn't been paying our mortgage for the past year while he chased this promotion. The doorbell rang at precisely 7 p.m. Martin arrived first with his wife Judith, followed by two board members and their spouses. I played my part perfectly, the attentive hostess with witty remarks and an endless supply of drinks. Ethan beamed at me from across the living room, and for a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen for him 3 years ago. His confidence, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, how he'd once made me feel like the center of his universe. The doorbell rang again at 7:45 p.m. "Are we expecting someone else?" I whispered to Ethan as he passed me on his way to refill Martin's scotch. "Oh, I forgot to mention, Cassandra might stop by. She's consulting on the Henderson project." His casual tone betrayed nothing but a familiar knot formed in my stomach. Cassandra-chan. Ethan's ex-girlfriend of 6 years. The one who dumped him a month before their wedding. The one whose name still made him pause whenever she was mentioned. The one who had recently transferred to Ethan's department. The one standing in our foyer now, looking stunning in a red dress that probably cost more than our dining table. "Why, the hostess with the mostest," she said, air-kissing both my cheeks. "Sorry I'm late, client crisis. You know how it is." She handed me a bottle of champagne. I brought Ethan's favorite. He always said your taste in wine was developing. I accepted the bottle with a tight smile, noting it was the same brand we'd served at our wedding, the one Cassandra had called pedestrian in her congratulatory card. "How thoughtful," I managed. "We've just sat down for dinner." Throughout the first course, Cassandra dominated the conversation with inside jokes only Ethan and their colleagues understood. I noticed how she casually touched Ethan's arm when laughing, how she referenced their shared past without explicitly mentioning they'd dated. Ethan and I practically lived at that sushi place during the Davidson merger. Remember those 2 a.m. tuna rolls, Nobody called him that except her. By the main course, Martin was visibly impressed with Cassandra's insights on the Henderson deal. Ethan glowed with reflected glory, while I silently served the lamb I'd spent hours preparing. "Oh, this is interesting," Cassandra said, taking a tentative bite. "I usually prefer my lamb less gamey, but I'm sure some people enjoy this rustic style." Ethan quickly jumped in. "Maya's still experimenting with recipes. She's come a long way from burning pasta." He laughed and everyone joined in at my expense. I felt my cheeks burn but maintained my smile. Under the table, my fingernails dug into my palms. As dessert approached, the conversation turned to vacations. Martin mentioned his upcoming sailing trip to Greece. "Actually," I said, seizing a rare opening in the conversation, "Ethan and I are planning our anniversary trip to Bali next month. I've already booked this beautiful cliffside villa with Bali." Cassandra interrupted, her fork clattering against her plate. "You're taking her to Bali?" The table fell silent. Ethan's face drained of color. We discussed several options," he stammered. Cassandra's perfect composure cracked. "That was our place, Ethan. We planned that trip for years. It was supposed to be our honeymoon." "Cass, that was a long time ago," Ethan said softly, his eyes pleading. Something inside me shifted as I watched this exchange. The villa in Bali had supposedly been Ethan's surprise for me, his way of showing he still cared despite our recent arguments. He'd never mentioned it had originally been planned for Cassandra. "I need more champagne for this," Cassandra muttered, reaching for the bottle I'd opened earlier. "Not her gift." She refilled her glass to the brim, took a long sip and leveled her gaze at me. "Did he tell you he called me the night before your wedding?" she asked, her voice cutting through the uncomfortable silence. "Cassandra, that's enough," Ethan warned. "He begged me to take him back," she continued, ignoring him. "Said marrying you was settling because he was afraid of ending up alone." Martin cleared his throat uncomfortably. Judith suddenly became very interested in her napkin. "I think we should," I began, attempting to salvage the evening. "You were always the backup plan, Maya," Cassandra spat, rising from her chair. "And now he's taking you to what should have been our honeymoon. Pathetic." In one fluid motion she hurled her champagne glass directly at my face. I flinched instinctively. The glass missed me by inches, shattering against the wall behind me. Champagne splattered across my hair and the silk blouse I'd bought specially for tonight. Crystal shards rained onto the hardwood floor. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Martin's wife clutched her pearls. The board members exchanged alarmed glances. And then Ethan laughed. A nervous, uncomfortable chuckle that grew as he stood to grab a napkin. "Come on, Maya, it wasn't that bad. Cassandra's just passionate. Always has been." He turned to our guests with an apologetic smile. "Drama queen since college, this one." Cassandra's lips curved into a triumphant smirk across the table. In that moment, everything crystallized with perfect clarity. I maintained perfect composure for the remainder of that excruciating evening. I smiled as I swept up shattered crystal, nodded sympathetically when Ethan explained that Cassandra had been under tremendous pressure lately, and even mustered a polite goodbye as our guests made hasty exits. Martin's wife Judith squeezed my hand at the door, her eyes communicating what she couldn't say aloud. "Get out while you can." After everyone left, Ethan launched into damage control. "That could have gone better," he sighed, loosening his tie. Martin seemed uncomfortable. I stared at him, incredulous. "That's what you're worried about? Martin's comfort? Not the fact that your ex-girlfriend assaulted me in our home." "Assaulted?" Ethan scoffed. "She missed you by a mile. Always so dramatic, Maya. She said you called her the night before our wedding." His hesitation told me everything. "She's exaggerating. I was nervous like any groom. I called a lot of people that night." "Including the woman who left you at the altar?" I pressed. Ethan's face hardened. "I'm not doing this now. I have the Henderson presentation tomorrow and I need to be focused." He headed upstairs, calling over his shoulder, "Clean this up, will you? The champagne will stain if it sits overnight." I stood in our dining room, surveying the wreckage of the evening. Food barely touched, wine glasses half empty, and the damp wall where champagne was already seeping into the expensive wallpaper Ethan had insisted upon. It was a perfect metaphor for our marriage. A carefully constructed facade now revealing its irreparable flaws. This wasn't the first time Ethan had chosen Cassandra's feelings over mine. 3 months ago he'd missed my father's retirement party because Cassandra needed emergency help with a presentation. Last Christmas he'd given me a sapphire bracelet identical to one he'd once bought for her. "Because it's a classic design," he'd explained when I found the old photo. For years I'd convinced myself these were coincidences, that I was being paranoid. The glass shards glinted under the chandelier light as I swept them into a dustpan. $700 for a set of 6 crystal flutes, and now we had 5. The asymmetry would drive Ethan crazy. The thought made me smile for the first time that evening. I waited until 2 a.m., when Ethan's breathing had settled into the deep rhythm of sleep. He always took a sleeping pill before important presentations. One of many details I'd filed away during our marriage that would now serve a different purpose. My preparations were methodical. I'd started making contingency plans 6 months ago, when I found text messages between Ethan and Cassandra that crossed every line of propriety. Nothing explicitly romantic, but intimate in a way that made my stomach turn. I'd said nothing, choosing instead to protect myself quietly. I retrieved the pre-packed duffel bag from the back of my crafts closet. "Your mess cave," Ethan called it dismissively, never bothering to look inside. My emergency cash, passport and external hard drive with all my design work were already secured in my crossbody bag. I left my wedding ring on my nightstand, but took the diamond tennis bracelet I'd bought with my first major client payment. Before I'd met Ethan, before I'd started shrinking my business to accommodate his career. The joint checking account showed a balance of $42,876.22. I transferred $38,000 to my private account, less than I'd contributed over the past year, technically my rightful share. Still, my fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Was I overreacting? Would reasonable people call this an extreme response to a thrown glass? Then I remembered Ethan's laugh. The way he'd minimized my humiliation. The years of small dismissals that had gradually eroded my confidence. The mysterious weekend conferences that left hotel receipts for room service with 2 entrees. I completed the transfer. On a sheet of our monogrammed stationery, another of Ethan's pretentious touches, I wrote 3 words. It was that bad. I placed it on the kitchen counter, propped against the empty champagne bottle Cassandra had brought. As I backed my car out of the garage, I glanced up at our bedroom window, the starter home Ethan complained about constantly, despite its location in one of Boston's most desirable neighborhoods. In that moment I felt nothing but relief. The knot that had lived permanently in my stomach for the past year loosened slightly. I drove through the night, stopping only for gas and coffee. By dawn I'd crossed state lines into New Hampshire, the GPS guiding me toward the one person Ethan had successfully separated me from, my twin brother Marcus. When Marcus opened his cabin door at 7 a.m., his expression shifted from surprise to recognition to fierce protective rage in the span of 3 seconds. He finally showed his true colors, he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, suddenly unable to speak as exhaustion and emotion caught up with me. Marcus pulled me into a bear hug, and for the first time since the dinner party I allowed myself to cry. I told you, he murmured into my hair. I fucking told you. He had. 3 years ago, after meeting Ethan for the first time, Marcus had pulled me aside. That guy's performing, Maya. Nobody's that perfect. Watch how he treats the waiter but not you. Our ensuing argument had created the rift Ethan carefully widened until Marcus and I barely spoke. I know, I whispered. I should have listened. Marcus made breakfast while I showered. Over scrambled eggs that tasted like actual food rather than the photogenic flavor-free versions Ethan preferred, I outlined my situation. I need somewhere remote to regroup. My business is mostly online so I can work from anywhere. Just until I figure out next steps. Marcus chewed thoughtfully. What about Grandma Rose's lake house? It's been sitting empty since she died. Dad keeps talking about selling it, but the market's terrible. The one in Vermont? Is it even habitable? It has a roof. Mostly. Marcus grinned. It needs work, but it's isolated, paid off, and nobody would think to look for you there. You went there exactly once when you were 12 and complained about the mosquitoes the entire time. I remembered that summer vaguely, the musty smell of old books, a rickety dock extending into clear water, and yes, mosquitoes the size of small birds. It wasn't much, but it was something Ethan knew nothing about. A blank slate. Road trip. Marcus suggested, already reaching for his keys. Don't you have work? I'm between jobs, he admitted. Got laid off last month. Was going to tell you, but Ethan always picked up the phone when I called your number. I finished, another puzzle piece clicking into place. The guy screened your calls like a prison warden, Marcus snorted. Changed your ringtone once when you were in the bathroom too. Heard him answer my call pretending to be you, saying you were too busy to talk. My stomach clenched. How many connections had Ethan severed without my knowledge? How isolated had I truly become? As we loaded my bags into Marcus's beat-up Jeep, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Where are you? We need milk for coffee. Not, are you okay? Or, I'm sorry about last night. For his coffee. I powered off the phone without responding and tossed it into the glove compartment. Ready to disappear? Marcus asked, starting the engine. Through the windshield I watched the rising sun paint the mountains gold. For the first time in years I felt something like hope, sharp and bright as broken glass. Born ready, I replied. 6 weeks into my self-imposed exile I'd settled into a rhythm. Each morning I woke with the sunrise, made coffee on the ancient gas stove that miraculously still worked, and carried my mug to the dock where I'd work on my laptop until the battery died. The lake house had no internet and spotty cell service, which meant I drove into town 3 times a week to upload completed projects and check emails at the local library. Grandma Rose's property was in worse shape than Marcus had implied. The roof leaked in 2 places, requiring strategically placed buckets during rainstorms. The plumbing made alarming noises and something, likely a family of raccoons, had taken residence in the attic. But the lakefront view was spectacular, and the isolation exactly what I needed. I'd ignored 17 voicemails from Ethan. The first few were demanding, "This little stunt isn't funny, Maya." Then concerned, "Your parents haven't heard from you. People are worried." Finally pleading, "Please come home. I miss you. Whatever I did, I'm sorry." He didn't know what he'd done. That told me everything. I was replacing rotted boards on the porch steps when a pickup truck rumbled up the gravel driveway. I tensed, hammer clutched in my hand like a weapon, until I recognized Jackson Reed, the local contractor I'd hired to assess the roof damage. "Looks like you started without me," he called, jumping down from his truck. I relaxed slightly. Just the obvious hazards. I'd rather not break an ankle before winter. Jackson surveyed my work with a professional eye. "Not bad for a city girl. Though you might want to reinforce those supports before the first snow. Gets heavy up here." Unlike most men I'd encountered professionally, Jackson didn't immediately try to take over or explain basic concepts I already understood. He'd simply offered suggestions when asked and quoted fair prices for necessary repairs. His easy competence was refreshing after years of Ethan's constant mansplaining. "How's the roof assessment looking?" I asked. "Manageable but not cheap. Structure's solid. It's the shingles and some flashing that need replacing." He handed me a written estimate. "Materials have gone up since COVID." I nodded, reviewing his detailed breakdown. "I can swing this. How soon can you start?" "Next week if the weather holds." Jackson hesitated. "I could knock off some labor costs if you're willing to help. Save you about 15%. "Deal," I said, surprised by the offer. Jackson taught me to replace shingles that afternoon. His instructions were clear, his patience genuine. By sunset, we'd completed a small section together, my hands blistered but my sense of accomplishment soaring. "You're a natural," he said as we packed up tools. "Most people would have quit after the first hour." "I've been underestimated most of my life," I replied without thinking. "Gets exhausting trying to prove yourself." Something in Jackson's expression shifted. Recognition maybe. "Know that feeling," he said quietly. We worked together 3 days a week after that. Jackson handling the specialized tasks while teaching me the basics. I found myself looking forward to these sessions, not because of any romantic interest, but because Jackson treated me like a capable human being. The bar was so low it was practically underground, but after Ethan it felt revolutionary. I was installing new kitchen cabinet hinges when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it but answered thinking it might be a potential client. "Maya? Don't hang up." Ethan's voice sent ice through my veins. I froze, screwdriver clutched in my hand. "How did you get this number?" "I hired someone," he said as if that were perfectly normal. "You disappeared, Maya. What choice did I have? You could have respected my decision to leave. Without talking to me. Without giving me a chance to fix things. That's not fair." There was Ethan's specialty. Making his transgressions about my failures. My unfairness. "I'm coming to get you," he continued. "The investigator traced your phone to Vermont. Some lake town. I'll be there tomorrow." My heart pounded. "Don't come here, Ethan. We're still married," he said, his voice hardening. "You can't just walk away." "Watch me," I replied and hung up. Panic rose in my throat. I'd been naive to think a powered-on phone wouldn't eventually lead him here. I considered running again, but the thought exhausted me. This was Grandma Rose's home. I had as much right to be here as anywhere. I called Jackson, explained the situation in clipped sentences. "Do you want me to be there?" he asked simply. "Not as protection," I clarified. "Just as a witness." The next morning brought Ethan's silver BMW crawling up my rutted driveway, looking absurdly out of place. Jackson's truck was already parked to the side, his presence inside reassuring but unobtrusive. Ethan emerged wearing his city clothes, designer shoes immediately coated in dust, pressed slacks, a cashmere sweater. He looked like a foreign object against the backdrop of pine trees and weathered cabin. "Hiya," he called, his voice carrying across the yard. "This is where you've been hiding?" "This shack." I stood on the porch, arms crossed. "It's called a cabin, and it's not hiding when you leave a note." His expression cycled rapidly through relief, anger, and the practiced contrition I'd seen him deploy in business negotiations. "I've been worried sick," he said, climbing the porch steps. "You can't just vanish like that. I thought you were dead. Yet you called my phone daily and hired an investigator instead of the police," I observed. Ethan's mask slipped. "You emptied our account." "My portion of it," I corrected. "Check the deposits." "We need to talk privately," he said, eyeing the cabin where Jackson presumably was. "This is between us. There is no us anymore, Ethan. I left for a reason." His face darkened. "Because of what Cassandra said?" "She was drunk. You know how women get competitive. Because you laughed when she threw a glass at my face. Because you've been gaslighting me for years. Because I found the hotel receipts, the text messages, the gifts you've hidden." Ethan's expression confirmed everything. Not shock at false accusations but calculation, measuring how much I knew, how best to spin it. "I made mistakes," he admitted, reaching for my hand. I stepped back. "But I love you, Maya. We can fix this." "Why?" "What? Why do you want me back? You never wanted me in the first place. I was the backup plan, remember?" His silence was damning. "Cassandra rejected you again, didn't she? That's why you're here." The truth flashed across his face before he could hide it. "That's not." "Goodbye, Ethan." As I turned to go inside, he grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. "You're not leaving me," he hissed, his handsome face contorted. The door opened behind me. Jackson stood there, not threatening, simply present. "Everything okay out here?" Ethan released me immediately, his public persona snapping back into place. "Family matter. My wife and I are having a discussion." "Ex-wife," I corrected. "The papers will be filed next week." I never intended to stay at the lake house through summer. My plan had been simple: hide, heal, then relocate somewhere Ethan wouldn't find me. Perhaps Colorado or Seattle. Somewhere with enough city amenities for my business but far from Boston's social circles. Yet somehow late spring had melted into a sweltering July, and I'd made no preparations to leave. "You're practically a local now," teased Layla, sliding a latte across the counter of her bookstore cafe. "You even stopped flinching when Old Man Patterson talks about ice fishing season." I laughed, dropping an extra $1 in the tip jar. "I still don't understand why anyone would voluntarily sit on frozen water for hours." "It's about the bourbon in the thermos, not the fish," called Mrs. Winters from her usual armchair in the corner, not looking up from her mystery novel. At 78, my nearest neighbor had appointed herself my unofficial grandmother and personal advisor in all things Vermont. The Bell Harbor Book Nook had become my de facto office 3 days a week. Layla had taken one look at me frantically trying to upload files on the library's dinosaur computers and offered her private Wi-Fi password. "The library closes at 5, she'd explained. "I'm here until 9. Just buy a coffee every few hours and we'll call it even." One coffee became lunch, became friendship. Layla introduced me to Sam, who worked mornings at the cafe before playing gigs at the local bar each weekend. Sam introduced me to his sister Kate, the town's only real estate agent, who brought her partner Danny, a graphic designer like me. Within weeks, I had something I'd never managed in 3 years of marriage: a community. "Big plans for the weekend?" Layla asked, wiping down the espresso machine. Jackson's bringing over that pressure washer he promised. Apparently, the deck is salvageable underneath 20 years of grime. Mrs. Winters made a knowing sound from her corner. It's not like that, I protested, feeling my cheeks warm. He's just helping with renovations. Honey, that man drives 30 minutes each way to help with renovations on his day off, Mrs. Winters said, finally looking up from her book. When my Herbert was alive, we called that courting. We're friends, I insisted, though lately I'd found myself wondering if that definition still fit. After the confrontation with Ethan, Jackson had been respectfully distant, giving me space while making it clear he was available if needed. We'd fallen into a comfortable rhythm of renovation projects followed by takeout on the dock, talking until mosquitoes drove us inside. I'd learned he was 34, had started his contracting business after serving in the Army, and made custom furniture in the winter when construction slowed. He'd been married briefly in his 20s, young and stupid, he'd explained, but had no children. He asked thoughtful questions about my design work, remembered details from previous conversations, and never once made me feel foolish for not knowing how to operate a miter saw. It was nice, uncomplicated, and absolutely terrifying after Ethan. I was gathering my things to leave when the bookstore door chimed. I froze, recognition hitting me before I even turned around. Maya? Oh my God, it is you. Cassandra Chin stood in the entrance, designer sunglasses perched on her head, looking as out of place in this rural bookstore as a peacock in a chicken coop. What are you doing here? I managed, awareness of potential exits flickering through my mind. Looking for you, obviously. She approached, arms open as if for a hug I definitely didn't return. Ethan's been worried sick. We all have. Your friends back home. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Everyone's talking about how you just vanished. Something in her phrasing caught my attention. How did you find me? Oh, your Instagram. Those lake sunsets were gorgeous, but that distinctive boathouse in the background? Google Images search led me straight here. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. You really should be more careful with what you post. Except I didn't have Instagram. I'd deleted all social media after leaving Boston. Mrs. Winters suddenly appeared beside me, her 5'0" frame somehow imposing. You must be the glass thrower, she said pleasantly. We've heard all about you. Cassandra blinked, wrong-footed. I'm sorry. No, you're not, Mrs. Winters replied, still smiling. But you will be if you don't leave my girl alone. Your girl. Cassandra laughed. Maya, who is this person? Family, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. Layla moved from behind the counter to stand on my other side. Sam emerged from the back room, drying his hands on a towel. Everything okay, Maya? He asked, his usually cheerful face serious. Cassandra's confidence visibly wavered as she registered the united front before her. Ethan sent me to check on you, she recovered quickly. He's been beside himself. The divorce papers were a shock. You can tell Ethan I'm fine. Better than fine. He misses you. No, he doesn't, I replied evenly. He misses his backup plan. The convenient wife who paid bills and hosted dinner parties and looked the other way while you two carried on. Cassandra had the grace to flush. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And you know what? I don't even blame you anymore. The realization hit me as I spoke. Ethan made his choices. You made yours. I've made mine. By hiding in this quaint little village, she scoffed, regaining her footing. Playing house with the locals. This isn't you, Maya. You never knew me, I said simply. Mrs. Winters stepped forward, surprisingly spry. I believe it's time for you to leave, dear. Our book club is starting and it's members only. Book club? At 1 in the afternoon. It's a literary emergency, Layla deadpanned. Sam moved toward the door, holding it open expectantly. For a moment I thought Cassandra might argue. Instead, she adjusted her designer bag on her shoulder. Fine. I delivered my message. What you do with it is your business. He paused at the door. But Maya? Ethan doesn't give up easily on things he considers his. After she left, I collapsed into the nearest chair, shaking with delayed adrenaline. Well, Mrs. Winters declared, she's a piece of work. Layla squeezed my shoulder. You okay? I nodded, mind racing. She found me through social media I don't have. Either she's lying or someone's pretending to be you online, Sam finished, frowning. That evening, a quick search revealed a new Instagram account in my name, filled with filtered photos of Grandma Rose's lake house. Images I'd texted privately to Marcus. The account followed only 5 people, including Ethan and Cassandra. He's monitoring you, Jackson said when I showed him later, his jaw tight. That's stalking, Maya. It's controlling, I corrected, a chill running through me despite the summer heat. Ethan needs to know where I am even if he can't have me anymore. You should stay with Mrs. Winters tonight, Jackson suggested. Just until we change your locks. I shook my head. No. I'm not running again. This is my home now. The word surprised us both. Home. Not a hideout or temporary shelter, but home. Jackson nodded slowly. Then we'll make it secure. Starting tomorrow. As he left that night, he paused on the porch steps. For what it's worth, you were magnificent today. Standing up to her like that. The compliment warmed me more than it should have. I had backup. You didn't need it, he said seriously. But that's what community does. Shows up even when you're strong enough on your own. I watched his truck disappear down the driveway, thinking about his words. Perhaps that was the difference between my life with Ethan and what I was building here. Ethan had wanted me dependent. This community wanted me empowered. For the first time I felt truly awake. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday in mid-September, just as the first maple trees began their spectacular transformation from green to gold. Plain white, no return address, hand-delivered to my mailbox. Not sent through the postal service. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Maya, I thought you should know. I'm sorry. Claire Peterson. Ethan's executive assistant for the past 5 years. We'd always been friendly but never close. Ethan had made sure of that, suggesting I was making her uncomfortable whenever I tried to build a connection. I stared at the USB drive, pulse quickening. Part of me wanted to throw it away unopened, to continue the peaceful life I'd built without dragging Ethan's toxicity back into it. My design business had expanded to include 3 regular clients. The lake house renovations were progressing steadily. Jackson and I had carefully navigated the transition from renovation partners to something more intimate. Our first official date had been a disaster. His truck broke down halfway to the restaurant in Montpelier, leaving us stranded in the rain for 2 hours waiting for a tow. We'd ended up eating soggy sandwiches in a service station, laughing until our sides hurt. It had been perfect in its imperfection, the opposite of Ethan's rigidly scripted, Instagram-worthy outings. We were taking things slowly. Jackson never pushed, seeming to understand intuitively that I needed to rebuild trust in increments. Sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, I caught a softness in his expression that made my heart stutter. Now, staring at Claire's USB drive, I felt that fragile peace threatened. I called Marcus. Don't open it alone, he advised immediately. Whatever it is, you shouldn't face it by yourself. I could just throw it away, I suggested, already knowing I wouldn't. Would you sleep tonight if you did? He was right. Whatever the drive contained, uncertainty would be worse than knowledge. I texted Jackson, need a favor. No pressure if you're busy. His response came within minutes. On my way. Everything okay? That evening we sat side by side on my sofa, my laptop between us, the USB drive still unplugged. You don't have to look, Jackson said quietly. And you don't have to let me see it either. I appreciated the choice he was giving me, so different from Ethan's constant need to control information. I want you here, I admitted. But if it's personal, I might need to view it first. Jackson nodded. I'll make coffee. Call me when you're ready. I inserted the drive with trembling fingers. It contained a single folder labeled Evidence, with dozens of files inside. Photos, screenshots of text conversations, email exchanges, hotel receipts. With growing nausea, I clicked through them systematically. The truth emerged in digital fragments. Ethan and Cassandra had never truly ended their relationship. Their breakup before our wedding had been a calculated pause. Cassandra wanting to pursue a career opportunity in Shanghai, Ethan unwilling to wait. I had been the convenient replacement, the stable option who would support his career aspirations without demanding too much emotional investment. Their affair had rekindled 6 months into our marriage, continuing intermittently ever since. The week I'd left, they had been planning a business trip to Bali, the very destination Ethan had suggested for our anniversary. In a video time-stamped 3 weeks after my departure, a drunken Ethan complained to Claire. She took everything, cleaned out the accounts, abandoned her responsibilities. I need that money for closing on the condo. Cassandra won't wait forever. Claire's voice off camera. Maya contributed most of that money, Ethan. It's the principal, he slurred. She's my wife. What's hers is mine. I called Jackson back in, wordlessly turning the screen toward him. He reviewed the material in silence, his expression darkening. I knew he was a piece of work, but this. He finally said, rubbing his jaw. Maya, I'm so sorry. Don't be, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. This is confirmation. Validation that I wasn't crazy. I closed the laptop. I've suspected most of this for months. Seeing it documented is almost a relief. You deserve better, Jackson said simply. The way he looked at me then, like I was something precious, not a possession or a backup plan, made my heart constrict. How had I never noticed the difference before? Jackson, I began hesitantly, there's something I should tell you. About me. He waited, patient as always. I was widowed once too. Before Ethan. The words felt strange after so long. My high school sweetheart, Tyler. We married at 21. He died in a construction accident 2 years later. Understanding dawned in Jackson's eyes. That's why you knew how to use a miter saw. A startled laugh escaped me. Of all the responses I'd anticipated, that hadn't been one of them. Tyler was a carpenter, I explained. He taught me the basics. After he died, I threw myself into graphic design, something I could control completely. Then I met Ethan, who seemed so different, sophisticated, ambitious. I thought I was making a smart choice instead of following my heart again. And now? Jackson asked quietly. Tao, I'm terrified, I admitted. Because I'm falling for someone again and I don't trust my judgment anymore. Jackson reached for my hand, his calloused palm warm against mine. For what it's worth, I think your judgment's just fine. I got you here, didn't it? Away from him, building something real. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Marcus's ringtone. Hey, everything okay with the USB? He asked when I answered. Yeah, just confirmation of what I suspected. Why? Dad just called. Ethan's lawyer contacted him. They're claiming you stole proprietary business information when you left. Something about an app design? They're threatening to sue for ownership. My blood ran cold. The app? My passion project for the past year. A platform connecting freelance designers with small businesses, nearly ready for beta testing. I discussed the concept with Ethan but developed it entirely independently. That's ridiculous, I said. I created it myself. Ethan had nothing to do with it. Well, he's claiming you developed it using his resources and connections. Dad thinks we should get a lawyer fast. As I hung up, Jackson's concerned expression mirrored my own racing thoughts. He's coming after your work now? He asked, having heard enough to understand. I nodded, a familiar sick feeling spreading through my stomach. The app is everything, Jackson. It's my future, my security. If he takes that. He won't, Jackson said firmly. We won't let him. The we sounded like a promise, one I desperately wanted to believe. He's bluffing, Marcus insisted, pacing my living room 3 days later. After years working at a prestigious Boston law firm, my brother had developed an impressive courtroom presence, one he now deployed on my behalf. This lawsuit is pure intimidation. Classic abuser tactic. If he can't control you directly, he'll try to destroy what you love. I nodded, though anxiety still churned in my stomach. But would a judge see it that way? A judge won't see it at all if we play this right. Marcus spread documents across my coffee table. I've been reviewing your financials since you left Boston. Ethan's made some interesting moves. Define interesting. 3 days after you left, he transferred $75,000 from your joint business account to a personal account you didn't have access to. Then he withdrew another $30,000 in cash. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Care to guess the down payment amount on that condo he mentioned? But I only took $38,000 when I left, I said, the implications dawning slowly. He's accusing me of theft while he's the one who... Exactly. Marcus looked grimly satisfied. We're not just defending against his lawsuit. We're counterclaiming for financial malfeasance. A knock interrupted us. Mrs. Winters entered without waiting for a response, carrying a casserole dish that filled the cabin with the aroma of rosemary and garlic. War Council needs feeding, she announced, heading straight for the kitchen. I brought reinforcements too. Behind her came Layla, Sam and Jackson, each carrying something. Wine bottles, a stack of legal texts, a toolbox. What's with the tools? I asked Jackson as he set down his burden. Your porch light's flickering. Thought I'd fix it while the lawyers talk. He gestured toward Marcus and surprisingly Mrs. Winters, who was now pulling reading glasses from her purse. Wait. Are you? Retired circuit court judge, 30 years on the bench, Mrs. Winters confirmed with a wink. Did you think I read those legal thrillers for fun? Well, I do, but they get so many details wrong. I gaped at her. Why didn't you mention this before? Didn't seem relevant until now, dear. She accepted the legal documents Marcus offered. Besides, it's more fun being just the nosy neighbor sometimes. For the next 3 hours, my small cabin transformed into a war room. Marcus and Mrs. Winters huddled over documentation while Layla and Sam helped me compile evidence of my independent app development. Timestamped drafts, solo brainstorming sessions recorded on my phone, conversations with potential investors that never included Ethan. Jackson moved between fixing the porch light, reinforcing a loose stair tread, and bringing coffee to everyone. His quiet competence created a foundation of normalcy amid the chaos. He's got nothing, Mrs. Winters finally declared, removing her glasses. Your app development predates your marriage, you maintained separate finances for your business throughout, and you have documented proof you never used his resources or connections. But... I prompted, hearing the hesitation in her voice. But fighting this will be expensive and public, she admitted. He knows that. It's not about winning for him. It's about draining you financially and emotionally. Then we drain him back, Marcus said grimly. Media coverage works both ways. Successful businessman sues estranged wife, isn't a great headline, but executive embezzles funds while gaslighting spouse is even worse. I don't want a drawn-out battle, I said. I left to get away from his toxicity, not to stay entangled in it. Sometimes you have to fight, Jackson said quietly from the doorway. It was the first opinion he'd offered all evening. Not for revenge. For closure. Our eyes met across the room. He understood, I realized. The difference between vengeance and standing your ground. What if we go public first? Layla suggested. Not with accusations, with the app itself. Launch it now, establish clear ownership. Make it harder for him to claim retroactively. A preemptive strike, Sam agreed. Plus, if it takes off, you'll have industry recognition before any lawsuit hits the courts. The idea took root immediately. My app was nearly ready. A few weeks of intensive work would get it to launch stage. With everyone's help, I could accelerate the timeline. I could reach out to my tech contacts in Boston, Marcus offered. Get some press coverage for the launch. My nephew works at TechCrunch, Mrs. Winters added casually. When we all stared at her, she shrugged. What? Judges have families too. For the first time since Marcus's call, I felt the vice around my chest loosen. This wasn't just about defending against Ethan anymore. It was about reclaiming my future. The next morning, I woke to find Jackson had arrived early, coffee and bagels in hand. He'd set up a makeshift workstation on my porch. An old door balanced across 2 sawhorses, equipped with power strips and a Wi-Fi booster he'd installed overnight. Your outdoor office, he explained. Figured you'd work better with that view and we can spread out the development team inside. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, understanding exactly what I needed before I knew myself, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Thank you, I managed. Jackson shifted, suddenly awkward. It's just some scrap lumber, Maya. Not for the desk. The thing me. The real me. His expression softened. That's the easy part. For 2 weeks, my cabin became development central. Layla handled social media strategy while Sam, who turned out to have a computer science degree, helped debug final code issues. Mrs. Winters provided legal oversight of our terms of service, and Marcus coordinated with his tech contacts for the launch publicity. Jackson came every evening after work, sometimes just sitting quietly beside me while I coded, occasionally offering a fresh perspective when I hit roadblocks. His presence became my anchor, steady, supportive, expecting nothing in return. The day before launch, I received a cease and desist letter from Ethan's lawyers, threatening severe legal consequences if I proceeded. I'd expected it, but seeing his tactics in black and white still rattled me. Classic intimidation, Marcus reassured me after reviewing the document. They know they're too late to stop the launch. This is just noise. That night, unable to sleep, I found Jackson on the porch, staring at the lake. Without speaking, I sat beside him, our shoulders barely touching. Tomorrow's the big day, he said after a comfortable silence. Are you staying? I asked, the question I'd been avoiding for weeks finally surfacing. Jackson turned to face me fully. For the launch? Of course. No, I clarified, heart pounding. After. When this is over. Are you staying in my life, or is this just a rescue mission for you? His expression in the moonlight was impossible to read. Maya, he said finally, voice low. I've been building furniture for your home for weeks. Did you think that was just carpentry practice? What? He took my hand, led me to the shed he'd been using as a workshop. Inside, illuminated by a single work light, stood a beautiful cherry wood desk, clearly designed to fit perfectly in my office nook by the lake-facing window. I'm not going anywhere, he said simply. Unless you want me to. For the first time in years, I made the first move, reaching for him rather than waiting to be chosen. His arms encircled me instantly, his kiss both question and answer. Tomorrow we would launch the app. Tomorrow we would face Ethan's retaliation. But tonight I was exactly where I belonged. The app launch exceeded every expectation. TechCrunch featured us in their Startups to Watch column. 3 angel investors reached out within hours. By evening we'd registered over 2,000 new accounts. The celebration at the lake house lasted until midnight. Champagne flowing, music playing, my unlikely family dancing on the newly reinforced deck under string lights Jackson had hung that morning. When everyone finally left, I stood at the shoreline, watching moonlight ripple across the water. Success tasted sweet, but vindication tasted sweeter. This was mine. Something Ethan couldn't touch or claim or diminish. You should be proud, Jackson said, joining me with 2 mugs of tea. This is huge, Maya. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, I admitted, accepting the warmth of the mug against the autumn chill. Ethan doesn't lose gracefully. Let him come, Jackson replied, his normally gentle voice hard-edged. We're ready. The other shoe dropped 3 days later. I was in the middle of a video call with a potential investor when my phone exploded with notifications. Excuse myself, I checked the screen to find dozens of messages from friends and former colleagues in Boston. Did you see what Ethan posted? Are you okay? These allegations are insane. Maya, call me. This is getting ugly. With trembling fingers, I navigated to Ethan's social media accounts. His latest post, shared across platforms and already gathering hundreds of comments, was a masterpiece of calculated character assassination. Statement regarding ongoing legal matters. It deeply saddens me to address the theft of proprietary business assets by my estranged wife. Despite my attempts to resolve this privately, Maya's recent unauthorized launch of intellectual property developed under my company's resources leaves me no choice but to seek legal remedies. Additionally, her abandonment of our marriage coincided with the emptying of shared financial accounts, actions that speak to a disturbing pattern of behavior. The post continued, painting me as an unstable, opportunistic gold digger who had used Ethan's connections to advance my career before betraying him. Cleverly worded to avoid outright libel while implying the worst possible motivations, it was already being shared throughout our professional circles. Marcus called before I'd finished reading. "Don't respond," he ordered immediately. "Not a word online. We're handling this through proper channels." "He's destroying my reputation," I said, voice shaking with rage and fear. "Everything I've built." "That's what he wants," Marcus interrupted. "To provoke you into an emotional response that makes you look unstable. Trust me, Maya. We anticipated this. Operation Counterattack is already in motion." Operation Counterattack, as it turned out, involved Marcus releasing financial records to a sympathetic tech journalist. Documentation of Ethan's embezzlement from our joint accounts, complete with transaction timestamps that proved he had moved funds immediately after my departure, not before. Mrs. Winters had connections at the Boston Bar Association, where whispers of Ethan's financial improprieties began circulating among his peers. But Ethan's most unexpected opponent emerged the following day, when Cassandra Chin requested a meeting. "Absolutely not," I said when Marcus relayed her request. "She's part of this. She says she has information that will help your case," Marcus persisted. "And Maya, she's scared. Really scared." "Of what?" "Of Ethan." The coffee shop in Montpelier was neutral territory, 30 miles from my lake house. I arrived early, securing a corner table with a clear view of both exits. Jackson waited in his truck outside, respecting my desire to handle this alone while ensuring I wasn't completely vulnerable. Cassandra arrived looking nothing like the polished predator who had confronted me at Layla's bookstore. Her designer clothes had been replaced with jeans and an oversized sweater. No makeup concealed the shadows under her eyes or the fading yellowish bruise on her left cheekbone. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly, sliding into the seat across from me. "I'm here for the information, not reconciliation," I replied evenly. She nodded, pushing a manila envelope across the table. "Emails. Text messages. Financial records. Everything showing Ethan's involvement in a scheme to artificially inflate his company's quarterly earnings." She met my eyes directly. "And documentation of his pattern of emotional and physical abuse." I stared at her, processing the implications. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I was wrong," she said simply. "About everything. About you. About him." Her fingers unconsciously touched the bruise on her face. "He wasn't passionate when we were together before. He was controlling. When I left him back then, it wasn't for my career. It was because I was afraid of him. Yet you came back. You helped him destroy my marriage." "I thought he'd changed," she whispered. "I thought I was special, that you were the problem, not him. I was wrong." The cafe's ambient noise faded as I studied her face, searching for manipulation or deception. I found only exhaustion and something else I recognized all too well, the haunted look of someone who had escaped something dangerous. "When did he hit you?" I asked quietly. "After your app launched. I suggested maybe he should let it go. Focus on us instead of revenge against you." Her laugh was hollow. "Turns out there never was in US. I was just a weapon he could use against you. When that didn't work anymore." I opened the envelope, scanning the contents. If authentic, these documents would not only vindicate me but potentially lead to criminal charges against Ethan. "Why should I trust this? Or you?" "You shouldn't," she acknowledged. "But verification is easy enough. The SEC would be very interested in these financial records. And the text messages." She swallowed hard. "I'm not the first woman he's hurt, Maya. Just the most recent." I closed the envelope, conflicted. The evidence would devastate Ethan. Exactly what part of me desperately wanted. But using Cassandra's information meant involving her in my life again, something I'd sworn never to do. "I don't forgive you," I said finally. "I don't expect you to," she replied. "I don't deserve it." But I believe you about Ethan. I stood, gathering my purse in the envelope. Get help, Cassandra. Real help. And stay away from men like him. From all of us. As I walked out, Jackson straightened from where he'd been leaning against his truck. One look at my face told him everything. That bad? He asked. Worse, I replied. And potentially exactly what we need. That night, as I forwarded the evidence to Marcus, Jackson built a fire in the hearth, our first of the season. We sat together on the sofa. I'd reupholstered myself, my legs tucked under his, the weight of the day settling between us. I could destroy him with this, I said, staring into the flames. Completely. Is that what you want? I considered the question carefully. 6 months ago? Absolutely. Now. I sighed. I just want him gone from my life. I want peace. Jackson nodded, understanding as always. Then unexpectedly he slid from the sofa onto one knee before me, taking my hands in his. Maya Walker, he began, his voice thick with emotion. I had a whole speech planned for another time. But today, seeing you choose healing over revenge. I've never admired anyone more. My heart stuttered as I realized what was happening. Jackson, wait. I love you, he continued earnestly. I want to build a life with you. Marry me. For one suspended moment, joy flooded my system, then receded just as quickly. I gently pulled my hands away. I can't, I whispered, tears threatening. Not yet. His face fell, but he nodded, moving back to the sofa without touching me. I understand. No, you don't, I insisted, needing him to hear me. It's not that I don't love you. I do, so much it terrifies me. Then why? Because I'm still fighting for myself, I explained, the truth crystallizing as I spoke. I left one marriage where I disappeared. I won't enter another until I'm absolutely certain of who I am, standing alone. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something deeper, respect. How long do you need? He asked finally. I laughed through my tears. Is that a rain check proposal? It's whatever you need it to be, he said simply. I'm not going anywhere. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against his. Ask me again in 6 months. When this is all truly behind me. When I've won this fight on my own terms. 6 months, he agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that tasted of patience and possibility. Outside, the first snow of the season began to fall, covering the world in clean, forgiving white. Winter transformed the lake into a vast white plain, the world beyond my cabin muffled and serene. For the first time in months, I felt truly at peace. The lawsuit against me collapsed when Ethan's company launched an internal investigation based on the evidence Cassandra had provided. He resigned to pursue other opportunities, corporate speak for leave quietly or face criminal charges. Marcus negotiated a settlement that included Ethan's formal acknowledgement that my app was developed independently. In exchange, I agreed not to pursue further claims regarding the emptied accounts. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was closure. You could still go after him, Marcus argued during his Christmas visit. The financial evidence alone is no longer my problem, I finished, handing him another ornament for the pine tree Jackson had helped me cut down. I'm done living in the past, Jules. My brother's childhood nickname slipped out naturally, making us both smile. Our relationship had healed during these months of crisis. The bond we'd shared as children strengthened rather than damaged by Ethan's attempts to separate us. Besides, I added, adjusting a twinkling light, the app is taking off. I have 3 employees now. Funding for Phase 2 development. I'd rather focus on building something than tearing someone down. Marcus studied me thoughtfully. When did my little sister get so wise? Around the time she started swinging a hammer, Jackson called from the kitchen, where he was attempting my grandmother's gingerbread recipe with limited success. The 3 of us laughed, and I felt a rush of gratitude for this unlikely family I'd built. My brother, who had dropped everything to help me fight. Jackson, who had been patient enough to let me find my own strength. The community of Bell Harbor that had embraced me without question. True to his word, Jackson hadn't mentioned marriage again. We'd settled into a comfortable rhythm, dividing our time between his apartment in town and my lake house. He never presumed, never pushed, never treated my home as his territory. Instead, he asked permission before making even small changes, respected my need for solitude when work deadlines loomed, and always brought coffee exactly the way I liked it. Little gestures that proved he saw me as a partner, not a possession. Spring arrived with a burst of activity. The app's success necessitated a small office in town, which Jackson helped renovate. My client list expanded beyond what I could handle alone, leading me to hire 2 junior designers. Mrs. Winters introduced me to her grandson's law firm, where I established proper business structures and protections for my growing company. Through it all, I remained acutely aware of our 6-month timeline. As May approached, marking half a year since Jackson's proposal, I found myself watching him when he wasn't looking. The way he hummed while sanding furniture in his workshop. How he always carried dog treats for the neighborhood retrievers. The gentleness with which he handled the bird's nest that had appeared above my porch light. One evening, while walking along the shore as the ice finally receded from the lake, I realized with perfect clarity that I was ready. Not because the time had passed, but because I no longer defined myself in relation to Ethan or my trauma. I was Maya Walker, app developer, graphic designer, renovation enthusiast, lake dweller. A complete person who chose to share her life rather than surrender it. I spent the next 2 weeks planning, enlisting Layla and Sam to help with arrangements, sending Marcus back to Boston for a special delivery. When everything was ready, I suggested to Jackson that we attend the town's annual spring festival together. Bell Harbor transformed its main street every May, with twinkling lights strung between lampposts, food vendors selling local specialties, and artisans displaying handcrafted goods. This year, the festival coincided with the 1-year anniversary of my arrival in Vermont. A coincidence too perfect to ignore. We strolled hand in hand through the festivities, stopping to chat with neighbors who had become friends. Jackson seemed puzzled when I insisted we visit the woodworking booth where he usually displayed his furniture. "My pieces sold out an hour ago," he protested. "Nothing left to see." "Humor me," I said, tugging him toward the booth where Sam waited with a conspiratorial smile. In place of Jackson's usual display stood a single item. A miniature replica of my lake house, detailed down to the repaired porch steps and new window boxes. The tiny front door actually opened, revealing a velvet cushion. Jackson stared at it, confusion evident. "What's this? I didn't make this." "No," I admitted, heart-hammering. "Marcus brought it from Boston. It was in my father's workshop, a dollhouse he was building for me before. Everything happened with Ethan. I never got to see it finished." Understanding dawned in Jackson's eyes as I continued. "Dad completed it during these past months. Said it was time I had a proper home." I took a deep breath, then reached for the small door. "But something's missing." From the velvet cushion, I retrieved a simple silver ring inlaid with lake stone. A recent creation from Jackson's workshop that I'd discovered while looking for a hammer. Jackson's breath caught. "Maya. 6 months ago you asked me a question," I said, suddenly nervous despite all my planning. "I told you I needed time to know who I was on my own before I could be with someone else. I found that woman, Jackson. She's stronger than she knew, happier than she thought possible, and completely, ridiculously in love with you." Around us, festival-goers had gone quiet, forming a loose circle of attentive faces. "Jackson Reed," I continued, lowering myself to one knee in a reversal that made him laugh through sudden tears, "will you marry me?" His answer was immediate, lifting me into an embrace that spun us both in a circle as cheers erupted from the crowd. "Yes," he whispered against my hair. "1,000 times yes." 2 years later, I hosted another dinner party in the fully renovated lake house that was now officially our home. Unlike Ethan's carefully orchestrated social climbing events, this gathering had no agenda beyond celebrating friendship and good food. Mrs. Winters occupied the place of honor at the head of the table, regaling us with stories of her judicial days. Layla and her new girlfriend debated book recommendations with Marcus and his partner, who had finally moved to Vermont after years in Boston. Sam provided background music on his guitar, while various neighbors came and went throughout the evening, bringing dishes and taking leftovers. My app had grown into a thriving company with offices in 3 cities, though I still maintained my primary workspace in the lake house's sunroom. Jackson's furniture was now featured in galleries across New England, though he insisted on keeping prices accessible for local clients. Midway through dessert, Layla's girlfriend accidentally knocked over her wine glass. The ruby liquid spread across the tablecloth as the stem rolled toward the edge. For a heartbeat, the memory of another shattered glass flashed through my mind, champagne dripping down a wall, a smirking face, my husband's dismissive laughter. But this was different. No malice, no power play, just a simple accident among friends. "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry," she gasped, reaching for napkins. "It wasn't that bad," I replied with a genuine smile, the phrase reclaimed and rendered harmless. Everyone laughed, including me, as we mopped up together. Later, after our guest had departed and Jackson and I stood washing dishes side by side, he nudged my shoulder gently. "You okay? I saw your face when the glass tipped over." I dried my hands, turning to face the man who had become my partner in every sense of the word. "You know what? I really am. That memory is just that now. A memory, not a wound." He nodded, understanding as always. "You've come a long way from that first night in the cabin." "We both have," I acknowledged, thinking of his own journey from solitary craftsman to community cornerstone. "I'm glad we found each other when we did. Not before, when I was still broken. Not later, when I might have built walls too high for anyone to climb." "Perfect timing," Jackson agreed, pulling me close. Through the kitchen window, moonlight illuminated the lake. The same waters that had witnessed my escape, my healing, my rebuilding. Now they reflected the lights of our home, doubled and dancing on the gentle waves, twice as bright as before. "Perfect timing," I echoed, and kissed my husband, who had never once told me that anything bad wasn't that bad, who had instead shown me how extraordinarily good life could be when built on truth, respect, and genuine love.